Well, the Insidious franchise was on its way. It had done a successful second film, which was clever in its usage of time and furthering, tee-hee, get it, of the further. So they had this structure for it all, and you have these colorful characters in what are the villains, these ghosts and demonic entities, and each one had their own appearance and image-wise, and it's very catchy. You had the red-faced demon, and then you had the crazy lady that turned out to be a guy and all that. Probably couldn't do that today, yeah. Especially since the whole reason behind it was his horrible, evil mother. Yeah. Like Munchausen by proxy. Anyway, so they had two successful films that it furthers the story. Can't get away from the word. And introduced a main heroic character, despite having been killed off in the first film. But it's supernatural and the afterlife and all that. So it's kind of fitting. Now, this was the character of Elise, not the character of the parents or what have you, although they it was the two films concerned them. So what to do? Well, who is Elise and all that? So we get some of that in the third film. Now, the second film seemed to end on introducing us to another story for them, and that Elise would continue on as the ghostly helper of the Specs and Tucker investigative team. But that was not to be the case. Instead, they decided to move towards developing Elise's story. Now, they could have done it in a third film that followed this other family and all that, and the same thing with flashbacks, and of course the no other way to put it, the time travel aspects of the further, that their time is not the same there that it is in the world of the living, I guess. And so there was all kind of avenues to do it. Instead, they just went ahead and jumped to a time not very long ago, but before the case of the Lambert family that the two initial films covered. So you jump over to meet this other character, but it's all about Elise, whom you already know, and we get a little insight into how she ended up in the first film. In the first film, you get the idea that she, as a young woman, was helping out Patrick Wilson character. I'm already dropping on his name, but with his problem and all of that, and how it tied into with the problem with his son, and so on and so forth. But this is more recent, where she was in the throes and depths of depression because her husband had passed away due to suicide. And so she's a bit of a broken woman, and also she's scared of her psychic powers and all that sort of thing, and doesn't want to have anything to do with these entities anymore. And it doesn't quite work that way. But anyway, this girl comes along, and she's the new subject of the film, more or less the one that's the target of an evil entity. And she's desperate to speak to her mother, who passed away. Now, mother, I believe, succumbed to cancer, and so she seeks out Elise, but Elise turns her away and says, "Yeah, I don't do that anymore," and all that stuff. And so the girl's kind of lost. And then she starts seeing entities. She's trying. I'm forgetting. Elise did try to help her initially, but she got scared by what she saw and everything. But this entity is following the girl. Quinn is her name, and so it's already too late for her. And if Elise doesn't help her, she's in a lot of trouble. And the idea of this, you'll see this in a lot of different horror movies where it has to deal with ghosts and all that stuff, is that the dangers of seeking the other side, or whether certainly Ouija boards keep being used. Don't ever let one of those in your house. But time and time again, you'll see that, and it's always the same scenario, that You try to reach out to a past loved one. You're desperate to communicate with them, just for that alone, or to say, I never got to say goodbye to you. I never got to say I loved you one more time, all that type of stuff. And it's a powerful motivation for someone to do that. The horror aspect of it is that it's some other thing. It's just this evil entity that'll take the form of your loved one and use that to take possession of you and all that sort of thing. And so this was really no different in that, except somehow in the delivery of it. So in each film has its own weird villainous character, and they had this odd appearance about them. So you had the red-faced demon, you had the bride in black, and now you have there's the man who can't breathe. So at first I thought it might have been someone trying to pose as the ghost of her mother, but she never really saw it as that, because I thought that her mother had died of cancer and that sort of thing, and that she would have been in this atrophied state before she passed on, and that might have been how she appeared. But no, it's just this entity that stalks the girl, and she keeps seeing it, but she doesn't quite know who it is or what that's about, and it distracts her enough to where she gets hit by a car and is nearly killed. So she's all banged up. Her both legs are broken, and she's in a bad way. And the demon keeps tormenting her, keeps coming after her in her room and everything. And she's alone with her father, and she's got a brother and all that. But she'll wake up screaming, and they come running, and they don't see anything at first. And all this type of stuff. And so eventually the entity does take her over, and I guess the more telling thing is that she smashes her leg casts off and then walks on her broken legs, which would be extraordinarily painful to do, but she's completely possessed by the entity now and all that. So they reach out for help. They can't get Elise, so they get Specs and Tucker. Now, this is a time before they met Elise, so this will tell the story of how they met. And they had an online show, what have you, I guess YouTubers who went to haunted houses and taped what they did and all that stuff. But the truth is, they didn't really know what they were doing. And so they're monitoring what's happening. And so there's some interesting scenes. And this is, again, making use of the aesthetic of found footage, but within a movie that isn't one. So it's still there, that kind of influence on it, to achieve mood and atmospherics, which is mostly what these movies are about. The overall narrative, the girl's possessed, we got to save her. That's about it. So Elise realizes she comes in at the last minute to save the day, and she's got to go into the further, despite the danger, to save this girl. And she does, of course, but it kind of falls apart after that. They really didn't have anything. It's just to show Elise is a badass, and she said, "Bring it!" And I mean, it's almost like. And then the girl's mother, her ghost, shows up to also help and save the day, because in the end, love wins, And the best parts about it really is just, and it's the chief thing about it, is the visuals. The man who can't breathe is a very creepy looking creature with his mask and everything, and the creepiness of it is that he was almost half victorious here, and that he had part of Quinn's soul. So you had this creepy image of Quinn crawling around on the floor with no eyes and no arms and feet. It was really disturbing to see that, And so that's basically what it is, and that's the weakness of it. So it's much weaker than the other two. It doesn't really have any clever twists in it or interesting concepts like the time differential from the second one and all that. And so it's getting a bit far afield. And I was like, when I compared it to what Sinister had a very strong beginning, and it was a good film, but to follow it up, what do you follow it up with? And it's just, well, they tried the best they could, but it just basically had the kids explain why they turned to this demon character and all that. Whereas here, well, it's just another possession and stuff, and they got to fight it. And so you kind of you paint it up with all this atmospheric stuff. It looks cool and interesting, but ultimately, it's not that great. And the only other thing is, well, Elise was in a a weakened spot, and she overcomes it. And she gets her mojo back, and now she becomes this heroic figure. It's not entirely consistent enough with the other movies for where she would be, but you know, it's what they did. I don't think it fully works. It's not horrible, and just for, you know, you want to watch a scary movie, then I guess it'll suffice as that. But the problem is they decide to revisit to yet another origin story for Elise in the next movie, and it's kind of, I need to move on. And maybe the only other thing left to explore more would be the further, but then you run into the danger of the same thing as Sinister 2 did, in which if you explain it too much, unless you got some cool thing that no one's thought of, and it's like, oh, that's neat, there you're better off leaving it alone and mysterious, you know, which means the franchise is over at that point. So once again, the high point is always the mood and atmospherics. Same thing with The Conjuring, and which is more successful than Insidious, but yeah, nevertheless, gotta admit, Insidious has more colorful villains, I think, than Conjuring. They got the Nun, you know. Yeah, there's that. But that's about it. A lot of icing. You know, it's pretty tasty. Probably not the best way of describing it. But that's about it. So, anyway, that's Insidious 3.